Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Jackson, members of council. The first item on the agenda tonight is something I just wanted to share with council. I just want to make you aware that the Somerville Miracle League plans to replace the Miracle League field on Laurel Street this winter. $180,000 was allocated for this project in the state's budget. The Parks and Recreation Department staff is going to help them remove the old system, but the rest of the project will be completed by contractors hired by the Somerville Miracle League. The second item on the agenda, Beth, if you could put up that first screen for me. Oh. Yeah, if you could, will it show them together or no? That's all right. You can just leave it there. Before I jump into the second item on the agenda, I just wanted to share some information regarding our youth athletics, which will ultimately tie into the second item on the agenda. So we have seen an extraordinary growth in our athletics from 2019 to 2021, and I'm kind of ignoring 2020 because that was the year with COVID. But we saw 131% growth in our spring season sports and 287% in fall sports. From 2021 to 2022, this year, we saw 19% in spring and a 30% growth in fall. I think there's two reasons for this. In 2019, Parks and Recreation got a software that allows us to, we have a database now where we can reach out to customers, let them know when registration is. We can send them weekly reminders. So that certainly helped us. Before 2019, we were paper and pencil only. So that drastically changed our department. The second thing too was COVID. After COVID, we saw people wanting to get out, wanting to be outside, wanting to participate. And these charts don't reflect the number of all the youth at Gahagan, such as like the Somerville Girls Softball League, Sertoma, which is now the Somerville Youth Athletics Club. But the space is really in high demand. It's a great problem to have because people are coming, they're using our services, they're coming back. And it forces us as a department to be really creative. It also encourages us to look to the future and how we're going to manage this growth because we truly are running out of space, particularly at Gahagan. One partial solution could potentially be the 11-acre parcel off of Dorchester Road, which leads me to the second item on our agenda. It's the discussion of a master plan for the donated Shoemaker property. Once the town establishes a use for this property, the 11 acres, with council's permission and funding, the town can request ownership of the property. One thought would be to use impact fees to master plan the property by identifying the trails, parking lots, fields. For example, we could potentially start working on creating a usable space and complete the master plan in phases as funding allowed. The property owner, per the agreement, will contribute $217,000 to the construction of a municipal recreation facility in 5 annual installments, but that would be at the issuance of their first certificate of occupancy. So I just wanted to bring this and see council's interest or willingness in creating a master plan for that property.
Let me ask you something about the Shoemaker track where the park's supposed to go. That's 11 acres.
So the section, the map, thank you, Beth, for putting that up there. In that top left corner is the area that's being donated, and it is 11 acres.
Okay. And that's all good high land.
Yes, sir.
I see on the other side, you got a lot of wetlands. Do you know how many acres that wetlands is? How much acres of wetland?
You mean down at the bottom, the arrow down at the very bottom where the red arrows are, that section along the river is also going to be given to the town. But I'm not quite sure.
It looks like a lot of wetlands in this plat.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but those 11 acres are right there off Dorchester Road. And I think right there on the edge, there may be a little bit of wetlands, but almost all of it is high ground.
Could you give a little bit of detail or a quick thing on what we've seen over in Goose Creek?
Yes. Beth, could you go to the next slide? So the city of Goose Creek right now is building a park. It's a $9 million project. It's a 13-acre parcel. So this is just an example of what a park, of similar size could look like. They have a community center. There's a food truck patio. There's an amphitheater. This particular rendering doesn't show it, but there's a playground, a splash pad, several pickleball courts, a basketball court, an outdoor volleyball court. So obviously we have a little bit of smaller footprint, but we could get a decent amount in on an 11-acre piece of property.
And I see they've got what, 4 pickleball courts from there.
Mhm.
Pretty, it's good looking. Good look at the layout. And you said this cost them how much money?
It's $9 million is what I believe the project is at currently. They have raised 1.4 million the last time I checked through sponsorships.
And Amy and Steve Doniger have already kind of started that process, formed a nonprofit like Dorchester County did to just Somerville Parks and Recreation. And is trying to speak to somebody that actually does these sponsorship things as our representative. So I guess what we're asking for council is this something we want to look at doing sometime in the future? And I can tell you from my grandkids, these things bring a lot of people. They fill every school and two coliseums in Myrtle Beach. Now, just volleyball alone in Orlando, they had 210 courts and 500 people. So that's how big these things can be.
What size of the acreage of what Goose Creek is building on?
This park is 13 acres.
And did you say there's ball fields also? I mean, what they have?
No, they do not have ball fields at this facility. What you can't see that I can recall is they've got a playground and a splash pad in addition to the features that you see.
And this is 2 gyms, correctly?
It's a community center. I don't know. What I would like to do is build 2 gyms on our site.
And Lisa, since you were involved in Myrtle Beach, maybe you can speak to the pros and cons.
Oops. Well, obviously, I think the pros are it definitely generates tourism. Sports tourism is becoming a big thing in the state of South Carolina. So anything that we could do as far as hosting tournaments, that would certainly be a plus. On the negative side, obviously with tourists, you have a lot of traffic. So that's something that we would need to consider. Parking, when you have crowds that are that big, parking is certainly an issue.
And my request or interest is really just if council wants to use impact fees to go ahead and put an RFQ out to master plan the site. That would at least allow us to know, okay, these are where trails are going. This is where the parking lot is. So we can start kind of marking some of those things out and make it potentially usable.
I have a question, if you don't mind,
I
Mr.
don't
Chair.
know. I open this is discussion for all of us.
As a part of this agreement with the developer, is a park required? Is that something that we are obligated to provide this property?
So I will read it to you. So the site can only be used, operated, and maintained by the town for public recreation and or other municipal purposes of the town. There is a clause in here too, that in the event that a recreation facility has not been established on the site within 10 years in conveyance, the site shall revert back to the property owner. There's.
If I recollect, there's no reason, and I'm not trying to poo-poo anything, okay? There's no mandate for what needs to be there. It could be walking trails or jogging trails on the whole site, which would meet the criteria, just so, I mean, it doesn't need to be this, but it can be as little as that or as much as this.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things with the question of getting an RFQ for a master plan. Because if council wanted to, they could put the trails there, which would basically give us the deed to the land and then do a facility later on.
Sure.
So in phase, right now, I think, as you see Charleston going, the area going, the sports thing is getting big and it's very profitable. Just volleyball, the only place you can go is Mount Pleasant. And we could bring some of that here, and especially being on the other side of town, traffic wouldn't be as big a problem. And maybe they'll get the Berlin G done before we get done.
Well, I'm for this. I think this is a great idea. I know, several years ago, we were approached by county council of doing something joint together and that didn't work out. Is a possibility that we could reach out to them and ask if they'd be willing to do a joint venture?
I would love and welcome that. Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess I'll ask the committee, do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion that we go ahead and put out a RFQ, is that what you said? For this. And see where it leads.
I'll second that.
Right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The last item on the agenda is the discussion of proposed donation to fund Laurel Street Tennis Court renovation into pickleball courts. Just following back up with council to see if there is interest in pursuing this or what direction they would like me to go.
Could you give us your preferred plan?
I know that there are a lot of opinions on both sides of the ledger. I think we are a very small Parks and Recreation department. We have very limited resources. I think that, you know, we have seen an incredible increase in pickleball players. That's not to say that tennis is not growing or that tennis is not a valued sport. We certainly want to support both. But I do think that there is an unequal balance between the tennis courts and pickleball facilities that we currently operate. I do think that this would be a good use of these funds. If the town was going to do this project on its own, I had already intended to at least line it for both, for both sports. So, my recommendation would be either to go ahead and convert them, or if there's a compromise there, it would be to line them for both, which is standard in many municipalities as they're building courts, is to line them for both.
And we also could have room for two more with those lined, correct? If we line those for both, we could get two more pickleball courts. If we extend it back to the fence.
Yes, there's an opportunity if we extend the current asphalt that's there to the retaining wall for the Miracle League field. We potentially could resurface that, and you would have 2 tennis courts and 4 pickleball courts if they were laid on top of one another.
And didn't you say that if you just redraw the lines for both, the pickleball, you have to put up your own court, or
They
net?
would use portable nets.
I see. And is that something that we have to bring, or do we supply that?
It's typical for the municipality to supply that. So we would have to put out some type of cabinet there where they could store those and have access to those.
I see.
And Amy, you're talking about the town accepting the $100,000 donation, and with this $100,000 donation, pay for all of the costs, or will the town would have some additional cost beyond that?
It would be, based on the quote that I received earlier this week, I believe it would be enough to cover that. I would have to go back to the gentleman who's offered to make this donation and make sure that he's okay with our plan and what we'd like to do. Because ultimately he would have to approve it.
And right now, we're not talking lights, we're just talking about doing the pickleball courts, right?
That's correct. There are lights there now.
Are those just regular lights or LED?
Those are LED lights.
LED.
And I guess, for me, the benefit I see of that is we'll have 4 pickleball courts. And we can have 2 tennis courts, or mix and match and change that as the needs arise. If we find out there's a lot more pickleball players, then we could take one of those tennis courts and just put the net up for 2 more pickleball courts, or leave it as 2 tennis courts. Myself, I haven't seen both the courts being used.
And that certainly is an option too. If you want to leave one side dedicated for tennis and the other side convert to 2 pickleball courts, you certainly could do that as well.
Terry, do you have a question?
Not really a question. So I guess I do have one question based on what Amy just said. But before we decide anything, do we need to go back to the individual to find out if a pickleball court and a tennis court meet his requirements for the donation?
Well, ultimately, I mean, I think we should decide what we want those courts to look like, or what we want those to be. And then I'll go to him and see if that's something that he's willing still to contribute towards. If it's not, then I think that we should just table it until we're able to fund that project.
Well, I have not spoken to everyone on the street. But I would say that they are mixed as to what the people on the street would desire. I would say the pickleball group is a bit more not adamant, but they are far more vocal in wanting pickleball courts there versus tennis courts. There are some who are vocal about wanting tennis courts to stay there. That's, I guess, where they play tennis. But most were, well, if it makes more sense to do that, do that. You know, what I talked about the donation, and there were a couple of negative comments on it, but mostly positive. I mean, the only other monies I ever remember being donated, I think we talked about this last meeting, was all Alexander. That was about 70 years ago, for 2 different sites. And at the risk of being shot by both sides, I still go by all of the courts. They're not used all day long in any shape or fashion. There is more early morning stuff at Laurel Street, and maybe on all of the courts, particularly with pickleball over at Doty. I've never seen the mix and match that, to me, sounds complicated, of storing nets and keeping nets and putting up nets and that type of stuff. The concerns I had from people on Laurel Street were particularly summer or longer light time days. What time can you start? How late can you finish? A little bit of noise, more noise associated with the pickleball game. But all of the things there, from what I can tell, are within our control. Well, it can't make the game any less noisy, but we can control what time we open the courts, what time we allow the lights to come on, how late they stay on, when we lock it up, etc. Um, I'm certainly not opposed to the tennis court and the 2 pickleball courts if we can do that. I would, as long as that meets the criteria of the gentleman. I think it's a shame to have someone who is generous enough to do something like this, not to get his own way, but just to come in and offer to do something. No harm, no foul if we don't do it.
Mr. Chair, and Amy, did we have any money? I understand that the current condition of the tennis courts are not necessarily the most desirable from a surfacing standpoint. Did we have anything in our budget to fix that in 2022, 3?
No, sir.
So we have zero money allocated to this project.
That's correct.
Okay. And we have a gentleman who has offered to give us $100,000. And you also mentioned that you have a nonprofit set up for parks.
That's correct.
I received more feedback from the pickleball tennis discussion than any other item in this is only my first year and we're only in the 10th month, but I heard more feedback from a very passionate community. And we want to encourage health and wellness and quality of life in our community. I wonder if this is an opportunity where there may be a matching opportunity where we don't take away from one entity, but we're able to add several pickleball courts at Laurel Street in that area behind. I'm sure you've seen, as you showed us, the Epstein graphic. And if there's an opportunity where we can do this, maybe combine the efforts of all of the passion and have 3 pickleball courts and a resurfaced tennis court and no town funds used at all. We're just the conveners of all the people who are passionate about this community.
The only thing I would tell you about that is to build new, it's going to be double the cost. It's going to be very expensive. We're also going to have to pipe in. There's a retention pond, which that area, it makes it much more costly. I do already worry about the parking. So I think adding both, kind of compounds that issue. Not to say that we couldn't do it, but it would be very tight back there.
I'm not an engineer, but before I saw what Eric presented, which was very well done, I might add, I had called Amy and asked Amy the same question. I said, why don't we just use the land back there? Well, then I walked the land. And it's not only low, it gets pretty close to the field. You got pipes that are running from Laurel Street through it. I mean, it gets to be it appeared to me, complicated project, whereas the getting ready to build courts was going to cost more than building the courts was what it looked like to me. And that just doesn't seem to make sense to me. Plus Laurel Street, where we've already got traffic concerns and issues at certain times of the year and certain times of the week and certain events that they have out there. I think adding more facilities there makes it very problematical for the people who live on Laurel Street.
And just to ask another question, the funding was not necessarily directly earmarked to Laurel Street. It could be utilized at a different facility where we have maybe more adequate space
That's
as
correct.
well. So
Yes. So
just
even-
something to consider if we look to add versus taking away.
Right. So even the Shoemaker track that we just spoke about, if the master plan had pickleball courts, for example, it might be possible that he would be willing to donate towards that project. Again, it would not be enough because it's that amount is not enough to build new. But it certainly could help.
It seems to me that because of our tennis courts that are there right now are not really large enough. There's no one there really playing tennis. at any given time. It just seems to me that this would be the better thing for us to do right now, is to make them both pickleball courts. And then that way in the future, if we're putting in an extra tennis court somewhere, we can actually pour it large enough so people can serve, et cetera, without hitting the gate backboard or whatever it's called. My concern is the parking. And are people parking at the church during the week? Are they allowed to do that? Does the church frown upon that?
God willing.
And is there going to be enough parking on the street? And if people are at the park, or even when Charleston Miracle League is going on, I mean, Somerville Miracle League is going on.
I mean, it's an issue. I mean, even now with just the playground and the Miracle League field and the courts that are there, I've never had, I'm sure that people do park there. I have never received a complaint or any issues from it. But you know, pretty much everyone just, they park where they can.
Okay, and then I had actually personally talked to you about off to the side of those tennis courts right now. Is there an area that could be just a dirt or rock parking for people that are coming to the pickleball courts, or maybe pickleball courts?
Russ and I did look at that street to see if there were any opportunities for parking. It's tricky that there probably is some room, but it would require, you know, removing the sidewalks and everything that's there currently. So it would not be an inexpensive project.
Guess just to give Amy a direction, I see we could do two things. One, talk to the person about 2 tennis courts and 2 pickleball courts, with the tennis courts lined for pickleball, and then adjust that. Or would he be willing to do it somewhere else and we look at how to fund it?
And if you do realign and everything, have you actually seen a court that was done both ways? Is it confusing? Is it going to be confusing for the players?
I was going to say, I feel like there's plenty of players behind me that would rather answer that.
So you do them in like in different colors, so you know which one is which.
But they reuse some of the same lines.
And I know, as I just saw with the heads, a lot of you are here. How many pickleball players are here? How many tennis players? But you do both.
Mr. Chairman, let me ask a question. The donor is donating $100,000, right, Amy? How much will it cost if we take the existing tennis court and make it all pickleball?
Well, if we use the current footprint, the quote that I have is 49,000. That's for 4 courts. If we want to extend it and get 6 courts, we're looking closer to 80,000.
Have you got room to do 6 courts by expanding out to the fence?
At least 20 on the table.
Well, that raises another question. And first off, let me say, just so I don't get gored by the tennis players who've called me on this as well, that, you know, they feel strongly about it, although I think it is more sentimental, which mine is. But you mentioned 1 and 2. Is it also 1 and 4?
1 dedicated tennis and 4 dedicated pickleball courts? I think that would be too tight.
Okay, well, now what you said, this is why I'm confused. What I thought I heard you say was we could, on the current pad with a little bit of work, we could put one tennis court and two pickleball courts.
Correct.
And you said we could take the current pad and make 4 pickleball courts and extend the pad and make 6 pickleball courts.
Yes.
I'm confused as to why we can't build 2 pickleball courts, a tennis court, and 2 pickleball courts.
Well, if you have 6, it's the width. There's not enough width to allow the room between the play because the tennis court is larger than the pickleball court. So
Okay.
you have a much larger tennis and then 2 smaller pickleball. Whereas if you had 3 smaller pickleball, you could fit that in that same
Okay.
width.
So the question might be, a tennis court and 2 pickleball courts or 4 pickleball courts.
In the current,
Current,
yes, if you did not want to overlap, those would be your options.
okay.
Or we could put a little more in and get 4 pickleball courts in the tennis. For the 80,000, correct?
No, you could get 6. You could get 6 6 dedicated pickleball courts, or you could keep the 2 tennis and overlap with 4 pickleball.
What do you mean by overlap?
Where the lines are drawn on top of one another.
But that would just be for 1 tennis court and 2 pickleball courts.
Confuse everybody that walks on the court.
I just think overall, the overlapping is not a good idea. I think it's just gonna be more confusing for the players. Plus, we've got to put another hut out there to store everything. Then you've got someone coming out and opening and closing. I think we're better off. I'm sorry, tennis players. Just doing all the pickleball. Pickleball is not gonna go away. It's only getting longer. And I think that we should look at expanding our tennis program. That would be the next thing that we need to do.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that would be good in the other side of town too, because a lot of those people are coming to town just to play. My neighbor, they come every Saturday morning to play tennis where there's nothing but that in. So, and we have the YMC area and the Shoemaker track that maybe.
Well, I've gotten a lot of calls about tennis right here in Somerville from people in Somerville. You know, and they're saying we're doing away with only, you know, not counting Doty Field, but they're talking about the whole tennis courts that's been here where they've been playing tennis for years. I hate to see us do away with that court totally unless we're willing to add a couple of courts at Doty Field. Tennis courts I'm talking about. Tennis is not going away either. It might not be growing as fast as pickleball. You know, I mean, I talked with Amy today and she said pickleball is not going anywhere and you said the same thing. Well, pickleball could be a fad, you know, and it could go away. We don't know. Tennis has got a history in this country.
Okay. I think pickleball's been around for.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna argue the fact, but I don't want to do away with I don't want to lose 2 tennis courts and add however many pickleball courts and not at least keep 1 tennis court somewhere. That's just my opinion because of the number of calls I've had, just from people that know me, by the way. Whether or not they play tennis or not, I don't know. I know a few calls I've gotten play tennis. Like Terry said, some of them may be sentimental, but you know, still the fact that they call. You know,
Yeah, I guess I see
don't-
it is, we have $100,000 to do the pickleball courts. That's money that Park and Recreation has a big trouble getting from us. And if we converted and got the 6 pickleball courts, that would leave for planning for more tennis courts somewhere else. And everybody has already acknowledged that the tennis court size and arrangement on Laurel isn't ideal. It's not long enough. So to me, to get the 6 pickleball courts basically for free. And then start planning for some tennis courts somewhere else. Makes sense to me.
I would, just to speak for, two sides, the tennis people that are there are very pro leaving out a tennis facility. It seems to me the easiest compromise is a 2 and a 1. And the main reason I say that is, sorry, pickleball players, 6 pickleball courts on Laurel Street don't work. That's too many people, too much traffic on a street that's already crowded. Four of them, I think, stretches it, but I think is possible. I recognize there's money there and there's money that we can use, but I think to put that much play on, I mean, that's potentially 24 people playing pickleball on 6 courts. That's potentially 24 cars. Less people are carpooling, which is very popular today. So that's just my thought, is the compromise between the two is to seek the 1 and the 2.
Saturday, this past Saturday, just with Miracle League, it was cars parked almost from St. Paul's Church. Actually past the driveway, way past the second driveway that goes into the parking lot of the Catholic Church. And it was cars parked in the Catholic Church to where their parking lot was almost full. Now, I don't know whether I know the Catholic Church has church on Saturday, but I think it's in the afternoon.
It's in the evening.
In the evening. So those were Miracle League people. So if we put 6 pickleball courts on that street on Saturday, I don't know where in the world people would park. Because without doing Miracle League season, because that's a bunch of cars. And there was nobody, by the way, I was walking, so, there was nobody playing tennis. Everybody was there for the Miracle League ball game. So, having that many people there playing pickleball, Lord, they'd be parked everywhere. I mean, I just don't know where they'd park. I'm like, Terry, that would be one busy street. I don't know whether Laurel Street can handle that. We would start getting complaints from Laurel Street. Right now, they're saying they don't mind. The homeowners, I think, told Terry they didn't mind the pickleball courts going, that it wouldn't bother them if the cars are parked. But the cars start parking on both sides of the street, on Larry Jameson's side of the street, and all the way down, we will get complaints. There was some parked on that side of the street Saturday, across from the playground. So, I'm just saying it needs a lot of thought. It needs a lot of thought into what we do. I'm not against the pickleball at all. I just think that we need to really use our heads. Looking at that Goose Creek facility a while ago was beautiful. It's sitting there by itself. It's not like it's right in the middle of the neighborhood where people are living and parking. And we just don't need to spend $100,000 of somebody's money and then in 4 years be sorry we did it because nobody's even using it because they're getting so many complaints or they can't find a place to park or whatever. I think we really need to think about what we're doing before we jump in and do it and then be sorry we did it. Because Laurel Street is a little narrow street. I was born and raised on it. I lived there till I was 18, 19 years old. And it's always had a lot of kids on it. That's one good thing now. There's not a lot of kids living on Laurel Street. There are people my age living there. And not a lot of young folks like my mom and daddy were when they had us 4 children. But, it's just something we need to think about. I'm all for accepting this gentleman's donation. Let's just make sure we spend it right and not be sorry that we did something that we're sorry for. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
And I don't disagree. We need to think about it, but for right now, we need to try to go somewhere so that Amy can take it, so we can know whether we want to do it or not. I guess I would like to hear a motion to try for 4 pickleball courts and a tennis court. That'll eliminate some of that. The tennis players will have their court, and Amy can take that to the fella. We can, if we extend the pad, we can get 4 pickleball courts and a tennis court.
That's my thinking too, Mr. Chairman. I think that we should keep it.
But yes,
thought
what
Amy
did
said
you
no,
say?
we couldn't.
If they're going to be dedicated courts, we would have 1 tennis court and 2 pickleball courts.
Okay, but didn't you say something about extending the pad?
Yes, we would have to extend the pad just for
Just to
the,
do
just the
that.
length. Yes.
Okay, and then you said to just do that, that was gonna be about 80,000?
Yes, to resurface it and extend it, it will be close to 80,000.
And so 2 pickleball and 1, okay.
I think we need to keep the tennis courts and build a couple of pickleball courts. I agree with the mayor that if you look at Laurel Street, you look at Doty Street, where there's a lot of pickleball activity. Doty Street has got a whole lot more space, and it's a straight thoroughfare there on the highway on Hickory. And if you look at Laurel Street, it's a little quiet street. You've got the kids' playgrounds on one end, you've got the Miracle League and coming in the middle there by the tennis courts. And so I think you should limit the activity there. I think we should try to put some tennis courts, the pickleball courts, but they need to be limited. I think we need to keep the tennis courts. Now, you, the gentleman that's giving the money, you can talk to him and see if I would make a motion that that's what we try to do. Have a compromise between the tennis court and the pickleball courts.
I'm sorry, Mr. Brown, could you clarify for me? So your motion is to do,
Let's keep the tennis courts and do a couple pickleball courts.
add pickleball courts elsewhere at another site?
I'm sorry.
You want to add pickleball courts at a different site?
I think we can do the pickleball there at that. If we limit the pickleballs, we can do it at Laurel Street by the tennis courts. But I don't think we should get rid of the tennis courts entirely.
I'm
Correct.
still confused to the motion.
I'm not, I was confused on what Mr. Brown's motion was. Were you saying, Mr. Brown, that you wanted to see both pickleball and tennis there? And I think the only way to do that, to have them be singular courts, is to have 2 pickleball courts and 1 tennis court, and we accommodate both parties, if I'm understanding it correctly.
I don't think we need to get rid of the tennis courts because from time to time people come there and they're playing tennis. And so you can accommodate the people that want pickleball and keep the tennis courts there. And I think that would cut down on the additional traffic too that you would have if you just had you got rid of the tennis courts and you just had pickleball courts.
Well, if you keep both, Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, if you keep both tennis courts, you don't have any room for a pickleball, right?
That's correct. Yeah,
Well-
one would go away.
So see, if you keep one tennis court, you got room for 2 pickleball courts, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Keep 1 tennis court and do 2 pickleball courts.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion, yeah.
Okay, I would like to add to that motion. Can I add to that motion or do
Can I
I
add?
make my own motion?
Well, it hasn't been seconded, so you can do what you
Okay,
want.
so my motion would be that we go ahead and do the 2 pickleball. We keep the 1 tennis court. And there's going to be evidently some leftover money. Could we go back and ask him with some of that leftover money? Would it be possible? Let's go in and try to make some dirt or rock parking off to the side of those courts. So there'll be extra parking.
I can look at the site again and see if it's possible. And if I'll probably consult with Russ. If we feel that it is, then I could ask him.
Do I hear a second to Kim's motion to add parking to your motion?
That's fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
I don't have anything else at the moment for the committee, but Mr. Jackson did ask me to share when he and I met with the contractor last week for the Jetson project. He mentioned that he had incurred some expenses that he was not expecting. He did not get pre-authorization from myself or Mr. Jackson. He has not gotten me that information, so I don't have anything to share with council at the moment, but I did just want to give you guys a heads up on that. That particular contract does have the language that is required by council, that all work orders have to be approved by council ahead of time.
Yeah, and I think, in hearing from several people talking about this problem, I think we need to look at changing the ordinance.
Yeah, Bob, if we could, we need to put this off until
Okay,
either the council meeting or next finance committee meeting, because we did not have it on the agenda
yeah, that's fine.
listed, if you don't mind.
We just didn't want to blindside everybody.
We got you. Got you. Thank you.
Do I hear a
I
motion?
make a motion that we adjourn.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye. And just, if I could, Mr. Mayor, just to let everybody know, we don't have a big emergency going on out there. That's our fire department, and they're having their annual fire parade safety, and they're going up to Lowe's, and they're gonna be a big display. There's gonna be free food and everything. So afterwards, go on over there and have a good time.
I'd like to bring the Planning and Development Committee to order. Now I'll turn it over to Ms. Schuler.
Thank you. Good evening. First item on the agenda is the petition by Mary Mead Associates Limited Partnership to annex a portion of Berkeley County TMS number 232-0002-052, a total of 7.76 acres located off Mary Mead Drive and Farm Springs Road, currently zoned PDMU Plan Development Mixed Use in Berkeley County, and will be zoned GB General Business upon annexation into the town of Somerville's municipal limits. This would be in Council District 2. Planning Commission held a public hearing and made a recommendation for approval at their meeting on September 19th, 2022. And just as a note, it says a portion of, currently they did get their plat approved at the end of last week. So hopefully we will have the actual new TMS number in the ordinance for the first reading on Thursday.
We move this recommendation forward for approval to full council.
I'll second.
All in favor, raise your hand by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Next item on the agenda is request for a major PUD amendment to the Knightsville Track PUD, aka Sweetgrass Station, TMS numbers 144-01-00004 and 143-04-00012, to allow the improvements to Orangeburg Road at the site entrance to be delayed until the completion of the 100th dwelling unit. This is in Council District 4. Planning Commission held a public hearing, and the motion recommending approval failed on a 3-3 vote at their meeting on September 9th, 2022.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to ask Ms. Jessie a question about the waiting for the 100th dwelling unit. Who is the requester of the delay?
The applicant is the owner of Sweetgrass Station, which is Levi Grantham LLC is who has requested
Okay,
to move it to the 100th unit.
I may have heard that it was influenced by another party, maybe the Department of Transportation.
So the reason they are requesting it is because, Beth, do you have the exhibit, please?
That's exactly right. Yep.
Yes. Okay, so, oh. So if you look at this exhibit, so Sweetgrass Station was approved back in 2018. And so Sweetgrass Station is the red there. And then the blue area is Six Oaks, which was actually approved prior to Sweetgrass Station's approval. And then the one in the middle, the green, is Pineland Preserve, which was previously known as the Shobe Tract, which was more recently annexed and approved. This is what happens when I have more than 3 items on the agenda, huh, Beth?
I should not have asked the question. I should have kept quiet.
Well, y'all kind of seen the exhibit. So needless to say, the one in the middle, the Shobe Tract, the green one, came online slightly later and it was approved, I believe it was annexed last year. And so when Sweetgrass Station, when they initially submitted their concept plan for the turn lanes to SCDOT, DOT was generally okay with what they had submitted. However, they had some issues they had to work out with the floodway and that sort of thing. So it took them a while before they resubmitted to DOT. And at that time, DOT, the Shobe Track had come online and DOT was aware of the 3 different projects. All 3 required turn lanes. So instead of having all 3 doing turn lanes at a separate time, DOT is now requiring them to do a continuous 3-lane section on Orangeburg Road. And so that obviously caused some delays for Sweetgrass Station because they weren't prepared for that plan to do the 3-lane section. And so while DOT did not actually say they could not move forward in terms of like they couldn't work towards a 3-lane section, they did cause a delay by changing what they wanted in that area, if that makes sense.
It does.
I hope I explained that correctly.
Okay. So all 3 parties, or I guess 2 of them are one party, but
So yeah, it's actually, it's 3 separate developments, 2 separate developers, because both the Shobe Track and Six Oaks are the same developer. So
the 3-lane section has to be completed by each of these entities, I guess simultaneously.
not necessarily simultaneously. Six Oaks has actually already submitted their plan. I mean, they're actually a good bit further along in the process because they were the first development that was approved. So they will actually start their section before any of the other 2. But so part of what they do want, because they want to get done, part of what they do will actually be slightly torn up when Shobe does theirs. So, but it's the same developer, so that they are aware of that. They're doing it to themselves. Let's put it that way.
Okay, so what is the risk to us as the town if we allow the request of waiting for the 100th dwelling unit?
So the TIA
Great.
shows that it should, the improvements are not warranted by the, it's fine to delay it in terms of meeting the improvements based on the TIA. Staff just would like some verification that they are moving through the process with DOT and that it's not sitting and I mean, I don't think that will happen, but staff, that's the only concern staff has, is that they want to make sure that it keeps moving through the process and that they don't wait to start again until they get close to the 100th unit, that it keeps moving through the process and that they don't stop working on it because they've gotten this approval. That's all staff would like.
What's the time frame to be at the 100th unit?
The estimate that was given at the planning commission meeting is 2 to 3 years.
Okay. So we have maybe at the, how long before we're at 50 units?
I would assume
40 units a
year to
year.
a year and a half.
I think you said about 40 units a year.
Well, that's a simple project to develop. By the 50th unit, if we structured the agreement, they should have pretty much finalized plans or pretty close as well as having an encroachment permit by that time frame. Is that something we could structure in?
If we can figure out a way to word the amendment to structure that in, that I think that would be something that could technically be structured
So then
in.
that gives you kind of the verification that, hey, you can't go past 50 if you're not at this stage in the project development process. And that would satisfy our concerns.
I think it would certainly help. So they've separated a lot, phase one into phase 1A and phase 1B. So I think so maybe what he's saying is it would be easier probably to say before phase 1B starts to have that done. Is that what you're saying? Phase 1A has the 64 unit. So doing it by phase rather than trying to say the 50th unit, because then that would be easier in terms of planning it.
Thank you. You gave me some thoughts. Thank you.
Well, I guess I'm a little bit confused as to what is the real reason for wanting the delay, because my understanding was that this group doesn't mind building it now, but there are, because of the,
Well, they don't have any plans approved. They haven't even done the plans yet. So they can't build it yet because they don't have plans to submit to DOT for DOT to approve for them to then build.
but is that because of coordinating with the other two developments?
Yeah, that's why
So
they haven't.
something beyond their control, as I'm understanding it, at this point in time.
Yes, they do have, well, yes and no. Part of it is beyond their control, DOT requiring something different. Part of it was having to deal with the floodway and getting backed up with the FEMA stuff, correct? Okay. So part of it was something they were aware of at the beginning, the floodway, FEMA stuff. They knew they'd have to get through that. That's just taking longer than anticipated. Correct?
I'm okay with the 60, the phase A.
Yeah, I am too, and I'm good with lessening it because we can revisit it when that time comes, like you said, and see where everything's at.
So you want me to put that into a motion?
If you'd like
I
to.
move we approve the delay, but structure it such that once phase one is complete, they
1A.
1A, they cannot proceed with additional work without having an encroachment permit from SCDOT for the construction of their 3-lane section.
And that section 1A is 64 homes.
64 units.
Okay.
Mr. Cornett, do you have any concerns on what we're saying? Hand on the Bible. Thank you. All in favor of the motion? Bob? Councilman Jackson? Yo, Chris? Yeah. No, please.
There are ways where we can apply what they put after time studies, that they could delay us again. We'd like to make our full faith effort and generic we need to get all the drawings submitted. I think this is important. But at some point it's beyond our control again. Does that make sense? Or-
Would
And
Would that
we can
bring
revisit
back
it then.
our same concern from the town standpoint of it not being done?
Yeah.
So that brings us back to where we started, which is not where we want to be. Okay, I think we'll leave it the same for now.
Yeah, because we can revisit it, make changes then if we need to.
All in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
The next item on the agenda is petition by Some Bottles LLC to annex TMS numbers 232-0001-024 and 025, 1110 North Main Street, and 232-0001-029, 127 Berkeley Circle, 3 parcels totaling 1.388 acres. Currently zoned GC, General Commercial, and RNC, Rural and Neighborhood Commercial respectively in Berkeley County, and will be zoned GB, General Business upon annexation into the town of Somerville's municipal limits. This would be in Council District 2. Planning Commission held a public hearing and made a recommendation for approval at their meeting on September 19th, 2022.
Any questions on this?
I'll make a motion to move the recommendation of approval forward to full council.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion
Next item is-
passes.
Next item is the request to rezone TMS number 137-01-06-001-333 Old Postern Road, approximately 1.16 acres, and owned by the town of Somerville from Pudd Plan Development District to GR2 General Residential 2 units per acre. This is in Council District 2. Planning Commission held a public hearing and made a recommendation for approval at their meeting on September 19th, 2022. As was previously discussed, part of their motion to recommend approval requested that council take some action to try and protect the historic buildings existing on the property.
I'll make a motion that we accept that.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Send it to council. A lot going on in District 2.
Next item, request to rezone TMS number 137-00-00002 Old Postern Road, West Richardson Avenue, and Parsons Road, approximately 29.51 acres and owned by the town of Somerville from Pudd Plan Development District to PL Public Lands, also in Council District 2. Planning Commission held a public hearing and made a recommendation for approval at their meeting on September 19th, 2022.
Let me ask you a question about this property, Mr. Chair. Or Madam Chair, what is the reason for the change in the from the PUD to the public lands?
The PUD was the original Woodlands Ion PUD, which is no longer viable. And since the town owns the property, generally all of our land is zoned public land, since y'all have to approve the site plans for those public land zone properties.
That's all I wanted to know. Thanks.
We move this recommendation for approval forward to full council.
I'll second.
Yes.
One of those tracks you've got for sale, where that Maple Street's coming through, I think that's part of the 29 acres. I just want to make that.
That's correct. Yeah, once that is subdivided, it would have to be rezoned again. Yes, yes, sir.
All in favor? Aye. Motion passes.
Next item is petition by Modco LLC to annex TMS number 145-1105-047 Dewey's Lane, approximately 13 acres, currently zoned TRM Transitional Residential in Dorchester County, and will be zoned NR Neighborhood Residential upon annexation into the town of Somerville's municipal limits. This would be in Council District 3. Planning Commission held a public hearing and unanimously voted down a recommendation for approval at their meeting on September 19th, 2022.
Move, we deny. Oh, go ahead, sir.
And what was their reasoning for that?
Honestly, they did not feel like they had enough information to recommend approval, given access for the property, that the full plan for the property, there was no fiscal impact analysis. But rather than delay the applicant, they just decided to move it forward to council with the recommendation, basically a recommendation for denial.
That is the old Bombadil track?
It is behind the old bomb.
Behind the old Bombadil track. As I went through this with Ms. Schuler, there's a kind of a lane going into this. It's on a relatively bad curve. I think townhouses, however many would be there, is not an appropriate use, nor something we would want. If they were looking at single-family dwellings, that may be something that was more appropriate, but I think the way it's submitted, it doesn't make sense for the town of Somerville.
Move we deny or move a recommendation of denial forward to full council.
I'll second.
All in favor, raise the hand, and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously.
And the last item on the agenda is petition by Mad Dog Development LLC to annex TMS numbers 14506040006 Stallsville Loop and 14506050008 265 Stallsville Loop, two parcels totaling 1.73 acres, currently zoned CG General Commercial in Dorchester County and will be zoned GB General Business upon annexation into the town of Somerville's municipal limits. This would be in Council District 3. Planning Commission held a public hearing and made a recommendation for approval at their meeting on September 19th, 2022.
Do we know what's gonna go in there?
Car
They are
wash.
requesting to do a car wash.
How many car washes?
Several have asked that question.
They must be doing as good as storage units.
Do we have a motion?
Move we forward the recommendation of approval to full council.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we open up the Public Works and Committee on Water Supply Committee meeting.
Evening. First two items are related. Both of them are quick claim deed requests from two developers that have adjacent property to each other. I think there's an exhibit that shows. Basically, the area they're requesting is for drainage off North Maple Street. When these properties are developed, all the drainage is going to be redesigned and reallocated to other places. So one parcel is requesting the portion adjacent to their parcel and the other the same portion within their parcel. Staff has no issue with the quick claim request.
You said no issue.
No issue.
Move for approval.
I think we have to do two actions, two motions. One request is from CVAE Somerville 3 LLC. That amount is 4,038 square feet. And the amount would be $2,031.09. That's basically what the town paid for the portion when we purchased it years ago. That's item A.
Make the motion.
So you broke it into two pieces.
I think we need to do one motion to send item A to council for first reading and
Yep.
one motion to send B to council for first reading.
Move we send item A to council for first reading.
Do you have a second? Oh. Okay, I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item B, very similar, 1,990 square feet, going to Dust Off 22 LLC. Amount of $1,332.73, which is what the town paid for that area when we purchased it years ago.
I would
Motion.
move that we move that to full council with a recommendation of approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Item 3 is a consideration of stop sign in Quarry Woods for a three-way stop at the corner of 6 Iron and Driver. I think this came up before council previously months ago and was turned down. The request was turned down and it is up again.
The mayor and I are the ones that we asked for this to be on the agenda, and the mayor and I went out to this resident today, actually, in her home, and she had about 4 other neighbors join us. And they told us that what has been going on for several years. First of all, it's a blind curve. You can't really see around it. The streets are narrow in the neighborhood, as you know, and there is a stop sign coming from an adjoining, what is the adjoining street there?
6 Iron.
Yeah, 6 Iron. And, there's a good picture. So what is happening is we observed the traffic that we saw out there. Now, we didn't really see anyone speeding. The speed limit is 25. I'd say most drivers are going around 30. But they're taking that curve instead of slowing down, and we have, what would you call those signs that you
We
have
have a curve ahead with intersections sign.
Okay.
either approach.
approaching on either side. But the people aren't slowing down. They're going around that curve too fast. So they are sometimes not staying in their lane, and they are hitting the curve coming around. Sometimes they're going right into the middle of the entire road to stay in the road, but they don't always see the opposing car coming the opposite way. The gentleman that lives right there at the intersection, they said there's several times they're just sitting on their front porch and they see people almost hitting each other, putting on their brakes, or they have seen accidents. Now, we were told, or you were told by police, that maybe there hasn't been that many accidents there, but we were told by residents that in the last couple of years alone, there have been several. Including people taking the curve too fast and going up into people's yards. And I guess once several years ago, someone smashed into the side of someone's house. What we observed are people are not slowing down as they take the curve. And there is no sign there that it says, it shows that the curve is there and the intersecting road coming in. But there isn't a suggested speed limit to go down to 15.
Ms. Storick is the lady's name that they called me twice since we voted not to put the stop sign there. And like Kim said, I asked her to go there with me since she's chairman of the committee. I talked to Russ this morning. He said they ran a survey and didn't warrant putting the stop sign there. And I don't know what our people go by, what putting the stop sign. And anyway, nobody's talked to her or any of these other people that was there this morning. But I did tell them, try to say it kind of like I said it. I said, if I was a strong mayor, I'd put a stop sign there. I said, we put stop signs up where probably if we'd have gone by the same rules that Russ and his traffic, I believe we had the traffic engineer then, went by to this stop sign, we wouldn't have put a stop sign there. One's over by Beth's house. One's right there on Parkwood Drive. They didn't want to put a stop sign then. We put one there because I insisted we put one there because you couldn't see coming down Shepherd Street going towards Simmons Avenue. You couldn't see through Betsy Simmons's yard when you look to the left. It's dangerous. So we put a stop sign there. Here, Ms. Storick's one person, but the other people were there agreed. She's an elderly lady who gets her neighbor to back her car in the driveway. And Kim and I noticed this morning, there's several people in that line of homes there that back their cars in the driveway. Because if you try to back out, you're going to get hit if you're not really paying attention with people coming around that curve. Because like Kim said, they're not coming around there speeding. They're probably going over 25, but the curve is so sharp and you can see it there on your screen that by the time you start backing out, they're gonna come around that curve and they're gonna hit you. But if you're going out forward, at least you've got a view where you can see and you can come on out and probably not get hit. But I think this is another case of us needing a stop sign. If I lived on that street, I'd sure want a stop sign at that intersection to make it safe. And by the way, all these people that were there this morning, all these people, I think it was about 5, it was more than 5, but it was probably 5 individual people, homeowners. They were senior citizens, like myself. Can't see too doggone good, but they were all serious about this thing and emotional about it because they just waiting for a school bus to hit them. School buses come around this curve the same speed, they say, and they'll go 30 miles an hour, 35, whatever they go when I used to drive one. But everything, garbage trucks, everything that they have come through the neighborhood. By the way, I was kind of surprised this morning at the number of vehicles that were on that street.
There's
'Cause
quite a
we were
few.
there and I mean, we stood in the front yard for a few minutes before we met her. And there was a lot of traffic on that street for being in the middle of Corey Woods. And that's where Driver is, just kind of in the middle of Corey Woods. But that's why I asked to put it back on the agenda since I told her I would. Because she said she just can't make it. She walks with a walker. And she said she just can't make it up here. So I told her that Kim and I would represent her. So that's what we do.
Is 3 Wood Drive the street that goes back out to Main Street where the light is?
3
What?
Wood? No,
What
it
drive?
doesn't go to Main Street.
Hmm.
I don't think it does here to Corey.
I'm just looking at Google Maps.
Huh?
Trying to show the reference.
I think Corey Boulevard.
Where's
goes up
Golf
Main Street,
Road?
doesn't it? There's 2 streets. Hudson Drive goes up Main Street and the other street that comes up by the car wash. Got the name of that
Okay.
street.
Yeah.
It comes in and
Alright.
hits Corey Boulevard.
Here.
Drive and runs off of Corey Boulevard.
One of the things that I noticed as I went ahead after our meeting, I drove around a little bit. It looks like the speed limit is 25 miles per hour there in the neighborhood, but I only saw one sign as I was driving around. So they're lacking signage for the speed limit. I definitely think that we need to do something at this curve. The other thing is right in front of this gentleman's house, at that curve, that's the bus stop. And so the bus stops right there. And then you've got people coming around that curve. And sometimes they're not stopping and they're passing the bus. That's a different issue. But these kids, there's lots of kids that are getting in and off of this bus. So I'm not sure if putting just a sign that says, speed, please lower your speed to 15 miles per hour is actually going to do it. I'm not in opposition of going ahead and putting a 3-way stop there. As the mayor said earlier today, I don't think there's any negative to doing that. And it is our road.
Madam Chairwoman, I would say that this is my district and I've been aware of the issue, I guess, now for about 6 months now. I don't recall, and I may be incorrect, I don't recall us taking a specific vote, yes or no, on a stop sign. When it came before us, what was suggested was that we would put the signs up that said curve ahead. And I was surprised by that because I had driven it a number of times in the week leading up to the meeting and there were already signs up that said curve ahead. So my recollection is we took a vote to put up signs that said curve ahead, and the signs were already up. So I'm not sure why we took a vote. Mr. Mayor, you are a strong mayor as long as 3 people agree with you, and I agree with you. So we need 2 more, but my motion would be to place a 3-way stop sign there.
Second.
Thank you.
Now, who's on my committee here? Okay, the 3 of you. Okay. All right, I just wanted to make sure. that
Unless you kick me
no
out.
one is- Okay, well, we have a first and a second and all in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
I guess that has to go to full council, but that would be on.
Okay. Okay. Do you have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second? We got a
Move.
second?
Motion to adjourn. Sorry.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, Dan, if you give us a finance committee, appreciate it.
Oh, sure. Good evening. I'll be pinch hitting for Rhonda tonight and give us our numbers for the end of September. On the first page, as you can see, for the current period, for revenue, we took in a total of $2,360,585.34. Bring our year-to-date total to $5,698,381.29. On the other side, for expenses, current period, we expended $2,378,088.22, bringing total expenses to the year to $9,128,751.25. On the second page, detail of that revenue. In the current period for property taxes, we took in $190,609.27, bringing the year to date to $894,708.52. Licenses, permits, and fees, revenue there, $496,713.63 for the period, bringing us to $1,836,789.51 for the year to date. Court fines and revenues, $20,089.67 for the period, $66,052.05 to date. State revenues, mainly local option sales tax. We've taken in $474,711.44 during the period, bringing that total to $1,053,929.16. On the next page, we'll see our miscellaneous revenues, which current period, $928,561.33, mainly from the sale of the retail property. And that brings the year-to-date total to $1,097,202.05. Transfers in from the local hospitality tax, we've transferred in $249,900, bringing the year-to-date total to $749,700 transferred in. Next page, we'll see our impact fees. Nothing for residential impact fees for the month. So year-to-date total remains $99,406.15. Commercial impact fees, you see we've taken in $229,174.40 for the month of September, bringing our total to $468,677.12. On the other side of that, for expenses, we've expended out of impact fees $5,261.48 in the month of September, bringing our total to $157,205.48 for year to date. Next page, you'll see where our local hospitality tax revenue for September was $449,998.87, bringing our year-to-date total to $1,474,545.93. And local accommodations tax, $37,846.57 of revenue for the month of September, bringing that total to $116,879.82 for year to date. So total hospitality and accommodations tax revenues, you'll see below, $487,845.44 for the month. And $1,591,425.75 for the year. Our last page here, let's see the stormwater revenues. Current period, $2,966.37. Year to date, $8,065.67. So that revenue comes in lumps and should be seeing an increase in that shortly. Expenditures for the current period, $87,327.03 for September, and that brings the year-to-date total to $389,083.59. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Authorization to issue a purchase order to Malden Jenkins for $29,900 from the general fund for audit services and $5,000 from ARPA funds for single audit services for the year ended June 30th, 2022.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move authorization to issue the purchase order.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Ayes carry.
Authorization to surplus the vehicles from the Somerville Police Department, Unit 219, a 2011 Dodge Charger, Unit 251, a 2013 Dodge Charger, Unit 264, 2014 Dodge Charger, and Unit 267, a 2014 Dodge Charger.
Motion,
I'll make that motion.
Second.
motion made and second. Any discussion? Do you want to talk about anything? Do we need to do that now? Okay. Okay, no discussion. All in favor signify by raising the right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Likewise, nay. Ayes carry. Finance Committee Executive Session. Motion,
Mr. Mayor, I move we go into executive session to discuss contractual matters related to purchase of a portion of town-owned property, potential purchase of property, and related to wetlands delineation proposal for town-owned property, and related to the sale of the town-owned Woodlands Tract Cottage and Barn.
Second.
all in favor signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed likewise. Ayes carry.